In a world where women are taught to be agreeable, pretty, and polite, what makes someone unforgettable isn't her perfection, it's her presence. The kind of presence that doesn't beg to be kept, yet no one dares to lose. It's not in how loud she speaks, or how often she's seen. It's in how deeply she's felt. This woman doesn't seduce with charm, she awakens something far more dangerous, truth. And once you've tasted truth, illusions lose their flavor. What if the most magnetic trait a woman can have is the courage to be fully herself? Carl Jung spent his life exploring the soul's hidden terrain, and one of his most powerful insights was simple. What we repress becomes our fate. The unforgettable woman isn't born, she's remembered. She doesn't force herself to stand out, she just stops hiding. Her allure doesn't stem from performance, it flows from her wholeness. From an early age, women are subtly trained to edit themselves. Smile more, soften your tone, don't be too much. And with every adjustment, a piece of the true self is tucked away, left unseen. But magnetism doesn't emerge from who you pretend to be. It radiates from who you truly are when you stop pretending. Jung spoke of the individuation process, a path towards becoming fully yourself. It's not about changing into someone new, it's about reclaiming who you've always been beneath the layers of expectation. When a woman integrates her light and shadow, when she embraces the raw, the emotional, the untamed, she becomes unforgettable not by effort, but by essence. This is not a video about pleasing others, this is about power. The quiet, steady kind that doesn't need applause to exist. The kind that makes someone impossible to forget because she never tried to be remembered, only to be real. Today, we're diving into 7 traits, deeply rooted in Jungian thought, that make a woman not only memorable, but magnetic. These aren't strategies, they're revelations. And once you embody them, you won't need to try to stand out. You'll stand in your truth, and that alone will be impossible to ignore. What if everything you were told to suppress was the very source of your power? From the moment we enter the world, we are trained, subtly and overtly, to minimize ourselves. Be sweet, be agreeable, don't rock the boat. We learn quickly that approval is conditional, and that love often depends on performance. So we begin the quiet work of disowning ourselves. We hide the parts that are too intense, too opinionated, too emotional. We silence the voice that says no, ignore the gut that screams enough, and tuck away the fire that once lit us from the inside. Carl Jung called this the shadow self, the parts of us we're told are unacceptable, unlovable, too much. These traits don't disappear. They retreat into the unconscious, where they start shaping our lives without our consent. The more we reject them, the more control they have. A woman disconnected from her shadow is never at peace. She'll find herself performing instead of being, pleasing instead of living, apologizing for simply existing. And eventually she'll wonder why her presence feels forgettable, why she feels invisible. But the unforgettable woman has done the opposite. She's turned inward. She's faced the raw, inconvenient truths within herself. The anger, the ambition, the vulnerability, the mess. And instead of running from them, she integrated them. This isn't a comfortable process. It's a courageous one. It means accepting that you are not just light, but also shadow, that you don't have to smile when you feel like screaming, that you are allowed to be complex and still be loved. When a woman reclaims what she's been told to repress, she stops walking on eggshells. She walks with purpose. She doesn't dilute herself to be digestible. She knows her edges aren't flaws. They're where her power lives. And that power, it's not loud. It's not aggressive. It's deeply rooted, quiet, steady, undeniable. People fear losing her not because she manipulates them into staying, but because being around her feels like truth. And truth is rare. And truth is irresistible. She is unforgettable, not because she demands attention, but because she gives others permission to remember who they are, simply by being who she is. What if everything you were told to suppress was the very source of your power? From the moment we enter the world, we are trained, subtly and overtly, to minimize ourselves. Be sweet, be agreeable, don't rock the boat. We learn quickly that approval is conditional, and that love often depends on performance. So we begin the quiet work of disowning ourselves. We hide the parts that are too intense, too opinionated, too emotional. We silence the voice that says no, ignore the gut that screams enough, and tuck away the fire that once lit us from the inside. Carl Jung called this the shadow self, The parts of us we're told are unacceptable, unlovable, too much. These traits don't disappear. They retreat into the unconscious, where they start shaping our lives without our consent. The more we reject them, the more control they have. A woman disconnected from her shadow is never at peace. She'll find herself performing instead of being, pleasing instead of living, apologizing for simply existing. And eventually she'll wonder why her presence feels forgettable, why she feels invisible. But the unforgettable woman has done the opposite. She's turned inward. She's faced the raw, inconvenient truths within herself. The anger, the ambition, the vulnerability, the mess. And instead of running from them, she integrated them. This isn't a comfortable process, it's a courageous one. To meet yourself without flinching is a rebellion against everything that told you to shrink. Most people live trapped in patterns, reacting, repeating, repressing. But the woman who reclaims her shadow breaks the cycle. She no longer walks through life trying to be chosen. She chooses herself. And in doing so, she becomes magnetic. She no longer edits her tone to sound softer. She no longer questions her worth in moments of silence. She no longer needs constant reassurance to feel grounded, because she's learned to sit in her own presence and feel enough. This woman doesn't scream for attention. She commands it with silence, not because she's playing games, but because her energy is whole. There's no grasping, no proving, only being. When you speak to her, you feel seen, not because she studies you, but because she studied herself. She understands the language of emotion. She isn't afraid to go deep, and depth always lingers. Reclaiming the repressed self means letting go of the need to be understood by everyone. It means being okay with discomfort, with standing out, with being labeled too much. Because what you reclaim, your fire, your feelings, your force, is what makes you unforgettable. It's in the woman who speaks with conviction, even when her voice shakes. It's in the woman who no longer apologizes for taking up space. It's in the woman who knows that her value isn't up for debate. The woman no one wants to lose isn't without flaws. She's simply without fear of showing them. She doesn't wear her shadow like a burden, but like armor. Not to attack, but to protect her peace. And peace, when it's real, radiates. People remember her not because she tried to impress them, but because she made them feel something real, something they didn't know they were missing. That's what happens when someone integrates their shadow. They stop performing and start existing. And existence, when it's unapologetic, becomes unforgettable. Authenticity has become a buzzword. We see it on social media captions and motivational posters. But real authenticity, it's not curated, it's not a strategy, it's a risk. To be fully yourself, especially as a woman, is an act of rebellion. The world doesn't always reward truth. It rewards ease, politeness, likability. But the unforgettable woman doesn't trade truth for comfort. She chooses truth even when it makes others uncomfortable. Carl Jung believed that the most powerful transformation begins when we bring the unconscious into consciousness, and that includes the masks we wear every day to survive. The smile when we want to cry, the silence when we want to scream, the agreement when we want to walk away. But here's the thing, people don't connect with perfection. They connect with realness. They connect with someone who's willing to be seen, not just in their strength, but in their complexity. Authenticity isn't about being loud or opinionated. It's about being aligned. When your inner world and outer expression match, you move through life with a sense of integrity. And that integrity, it's magnetic. The unforgettable woman isn't trying to impress. She's not performing. She's just showing up as herself, fully, consistently, unapologetically. And that consistency creates a deep sense of trust. People may not always agree with her, but they feel her, and that's what they remember. In a world of edited personalities and filtered realities, the courage to be raw is rare, but that's exactly what sets her apart. She doesn't hide her emotions to make others comfortable. She doesn't suppress her needs for the sake of being chill. She's not aggressive, but she is honest. She says what she means. She honors what she feels. And that makes her a safe space, not because she never falters, but because she's real when she does. This kind of woman isn't seeking applause. She's seeking alignment. And when she's in alignment, she becomes unforgettable. Not because she tries to be, but because there's no one else like her. Let's be clear, authenticity isn't easy. It will cost you. Some people will misunderstand you. Others will walk away. But the right ones, the ones who resonate with your truth, will stay. And those relationships will feel like oxygen. The woman who embodies this lives with her heart open, but not naively. She understands that being vulnerable doesn't mean being weak. It means having the strength to stand in her truth, even when it's met with silence or judgment. She doesn't shapeshift to be more palatable. She doesn't shrink to keep the peace. Her peace is internal, rooted, earned. And because she doesn't need validation, she becomes unforgettable to those who do. This woman knows that authenticity doesn't mean stagnation. She's not fixed. She evolves. But she evolves from the inside out, not because someone told her to change, but because she chose to grow. Her presence is a mirror. It reflects not only who she is, but who you are when you're around her. And that's why she's unforgettable, because she gives people the space to be more themselves just by being more of herself. And while others chase attention, she commands respect. She doesn't manipulate. She doesn't convince. She simply embodies. And embodiment doesn't shout, it radiates. In her presence, small talk becomes rare. Conversations go deeper, connections feel richer, and even in silence there's substance. Authenticity requires boundaries. It requires discernment. She doesn't share everything with everyone, but what she does share is real. She doesn't speak to be liked. She speaks to be understood, and those who listen, they never forget her. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." The unforgettable woman takes that privilege seriously. She doesn't wait for permission. She doesn't need a crowd to validate her path. She walks it because it's hers. She is not immune to doubt. She doesn't float through life untouched by insecurity. But when the moment comes to choose, approval or authenticity, she picks herself, every time. And that choice echoes. You feel it in how she carries herself, in the stillness between her words, in the way she holds space, not just for others, but for her own evolution. She grows, not because she's trying to prove something, but because she refuses to stay small. And in that refusal, she becomes unforgettable, not by volume, not by effort, but by truth, quiet, present, whole. There's a quiet power in a woman who doesn't need anyone to complete her. Carl Jung taught that every person contains both masculine and feminine principles, the anima and the animus. But most women are taught to embody only one side, the nurturing, gentle, receptive feminine. Anything assertive, logical, ambitious, that's often labeled masculine and subtly, or overtly discouraged. So what happens? Women learn to suppress half of their psyche. They become fragmented, disempowered, dependent. But the unforgettable woman is different. She's whole. She has embraced her feminine softness, her intuition, her emotional depth. But she has also integrated her inner masculine, the part that knows how to take action, create structure, speak with authority, and protect her boundaries. She doesn't wait to be saved. She saves herself. This integration of energies doesn't make her hard. It makes her balanced. She can hold her own in any space, not because she's performing masculinity, but because she's accessed her full potential. She's the woman who can cry without shame and speak without hesitation, the one who nurtures with warmth and leads with clarity. She knows when to flow and when to hold the line. She gives from overflow, not obligation. Jung believed that inner harmony came from integrating opposites, and the unforgettable woman is living proof. She doesn't see her ambition as a betrayal of her femininity. She sees it as an expression of her fullness. She doesn't need permission to want more. She doesn't apologize for taking up space, emotionally, intellectually, or energetically, because she knows that true power is not domination, but self-possession. This inner balance creates a presence that's hard to define, but impossible to forget. People may not know why they're drawn to her, but they are. She radiates a calm authority, a grounded confidence. She doesn't waver when challenged. She doesn't crumble when things fall apart, because her strength isn't borrowed, it's integrated. And because she's emotionally self-sufficient, her love becomes a gift, not a negotiation. She doesn't seek relationships from lack. She's not looking to be completed, rescued, or validated. She's already all those things for herself. So when she loves, it's from abundance. When she gives, it's without expectation. When she connects, it's without attachment to outcome. This is why she's unforgettable. She doesn't chase, she chooses. And when she chooses you, you feel it. Not because she needs you, but because she wants you. That difference, it changes everything. A woman who has integrated her animus is not cold or inaccessible. On the contrary, she's more emotionally available than most. But her availability doesn't come from desperation. It comes from security. She can be soft without being weak. She can be firm without being cruel. She can be sensual without being submissive. And in this balance lies her brilliance. She no longer sees power as something external to acquire, but as something internal to remember. And this remembrance makes her magnetic. She walks through life with clarity, not just about what she wants, but about what she'll never settle for again. She doesn't need chaos to feel alive. She doesn't need someone to tell her who she is. She's already met herself, in her light and in her dark. And that meeting changed everything. Her wholeness doesn't mean she never breaks. It means she knows how to rebuild. With dignity, with grace, with intention. When a woman reaches this level of self-integration, she becomes rare. Not because other women can't do it, but because few are willing to face themselves completely. It takes work. It takes time. It takes the courage to confront everything you've avoided. And that's what makes her unforgettable. Not just her beauty, not just her strength, but her depth, her peace, her precision. She is not here to play small, to be rescued, or to be consumed. She is here to walk with presence. She has stepped into the fullness of who she is, without needing to dim her light or dull her instincts. And in doing so, she becomes the rarest kind of force, one that is at once tender and unshakable. The woman who has integrated her masculine and feminine doesn't just inspire desire. She inspires respect, reverence, and above all, memory. Because wholeness, when witnessed, is unforgettable. What draws people in isn't always what's visible, it's what's felt. In a culture obsessed with surface, looks, likes, aesthetics, the unforgettable woman isn't playing to be seen, she's showing up to be felt. And you know, the difference between those two is everything. You can't fake depth. You can mimic charm, rehearse confidence, perfect your image, but none of that substitutes the weight of real presence. Carl Jung wrote that relationships aren't formed between masks, but between souls. The woman no one wants to lose knows this deeply. She doesn't try to be impressive, she dares to be intimate. Her magnetism isn't in what she performs, it's in what she reveals, and what she doesn't. She's not oversharing for attention or withholding for control. She's simply in tune with her own energy. She gives when it's real. She listens when it matters. She doesn't fill silence with noise or pretend to enjoy what she doesn't. Her honesty is subtle but disarming. People remember her because they can feel her. Not the version of her she wants them to see, but the truth of who she is. She doesn't rush to explain herself. She doesn't fear being misunderstood. That's because her sense of self isn't tied to how others perceive her. She's not chasing approval. She's grounded in truth. And that truth is layered, rich, sometimes uncomfortable, often surprising. She doesn't need to provoke to be interesting. Her depth comes not from dramatics, but from stillness. from a lifetime of choosing presence over performance. You won't catch her trying to be mysterious, but she is. Not because she's hiding, but because she's full. Her thoughts are nuanced. Her emotions are textured. Her energy speaks in quiet ways that don't need volume to be heard. You might walk away from a conversation with her realizing you felt more than you understood. That's her effect. She echoes, long after the moment has passed. She can be playful, even funny, but never shallow. Even her lightness carries weight, because it's not a mask, it's a choice. A woman with depth knows how to dance with the world without losing her gravity. The world rewards performance. But performance fades. Depth lingers. The unforgettable woman is not the one who commands attention. She's the one who creates connection. She doesn't beg to be remembered. She's remembered because being with her feels different, safer, wilder, realer. She can speak about dreams, fears, love, pain, all in one breath. She isn't afraid of contradiction. She isn't afraid of silence. She knows the power of a pause. She knows when to hold space and when to fill it. And this doesn't come from scripts or strategies. It comes from self-awareness, from having done the work, from sitting with her own emotions long enough to not be afraid of anyone else's. She doesn't need to be the most entertaining person in the room. She's the most anchored. That anchoring gives people permission to put their masks down. And in a world where everyone's performing, that feels like freedom. There's a reason why people feel magnetized by her. It's not her appearance, though she may be beautiful. It's not her words, though they may be eloquent. It's her energy, her presence, the way she's fully there. In relationships, she isn't calculating. She isn't manipulating. She doesn't love to win. She loves because it's in her nature, but she loves from fullness, not from fear. If someone pulls away, she doesn't chase. She reflects. If someone gets close, she welcomes, but doesn't collapse. Her depth protects her from emotional dependency. It makes her generous but discerning. Depth doesn't mean she's always serious, but it does mean she's always real. She can laugh deeply, cry honestly, speak gently, but she never fakes her way through life. She's not exhausting to keep up with, because she's not performing. She's just being. And being, when it's sincere, is more powerful than any performance. She's the one who leaves you thinking, long after she's gone. The one who made you feel seen in ways you didn't expect. The one who brought you closer to yourself just by being fully herself. That's not charisma. That's consciousness. And once you've experienced that kind of presence, anything less feels hollow. There's a version of you the world has never met, not because she doesn't exist, but because she's been waiting for your permission. Carl Jung called it individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are. It's not about improvement, it's about integration. Not about adding more, but about reclaiming what was always yours. The unforgettable woman isn't molded by the world. She's carved out of her own inner work. She's not chasing ideals. She's uncovering essence. And at the end of that uncovering, you don't find perfection. You find the inner goddess, not in a mystical sense, but in a psychological one. A woman who embodies the totality of herself, her rage and her grace, her chaos and her clarity, her softness and her sovereignty. She's not at war with herself. She's united. She doesn't cut pieces of herself to fit into someone else's frame. She frames her own life and fills it fully. Individuation means letting go of borrowed identities. The good girl, the cool girl, the one who's easy to love because she's easy to control. The woman no one wants to lose has shed all of that. She's chosen herself, not as an act of rebellion, but as an act of remembering. Her self-worth isn't up for negotiation. It's not based on applause or attention. It's based on internal alignment. On a quiet, grounded knowing, I am whole. And wholeness isn't static. It's alive. It's ever evolving. The inner goddess isn't frozen in one identity. She flows. She burns. She rebuilds. Again and again. She's in touch with her desires, Not just romantic ones, but spiritual, intellectual, creative. She doesn't suppress them for approval. She follows them with reverence. Because she understands that desire is divine, that longing is a compass. Her life isn't dictated by trends or timelines. She doesn't rush because others do. She doesn't slow down to make others comfortable. She moves with intention, with rhythm, with purpose. And people feel that. In a world addicted to urgency and distraction, her presence feels like a deep breath, a pause, a return. She doesn't just exist, she inhabits every word, every silence, every choice. Nothing is hollow. Nothing is performative. Because she's not fragmented anymore. She's integrated. That integration makes her radiant, not just in beauty, but in being. She doesn't need to convince anyone of her value. It emanates, not because she's flawless, but because she's real. She has faced her shadows. She has looked herself in the eye on her worst days and stayed. She didn't run. She didn't pretend. She sat with her shame, her grief, her fear, and instead of turning them into armor, she turned them into wisdom. That's what makes her unforgettable. Not the shine, the depth. Because when a woman reclaims every part of her story, when she stops editing her truth to fit someone else's comfort, she becomes a force. She might not be everyone's favorite, but she'll never be overlooked. Individuation also means freedom. Not the freedom to escape life, but to create it. She's not operating from survival anymore. She's choosing. Her relationships are conscious. Her boundaries are sacred. Her joy is revolutionary. She no longer needs others to make her feel alive. She is aliveness. And because of that, being around her awakens something in you. She doesn't just inspire. You start to remember who you are when you're with her. That's not manipulation. That's resonance. The woman who's individuated doesn't fear solitude. She honors it, because she knows that only in solitude can you hear your own voice. And her voice? It's not always sweet, but it's always hers. And when she speaks from that voice, clear, unfiltered, true, people listen. Not because she demands attention, but because truth cuts through noise like nothing else. The inner goddess doesn't wear a crown. She wears presence. She doesn't walk ahead or behind. She walks beside, with anyone strong enough to walk with her. She is not above love. She just no longer begs for it. She offers it freely, but never at the expense of herself. She's rooted not in arrogance, but in awareness. Her confidence is not loud. It's low and steady. It's built from knowing what she's survived, from understanding what she brings, from living in deep coherence with her values. That's why people don't want to lose her. Not because she makes them feel better, but because she makes them feel more. She is not an escape. She is an arrival. And once you've arrived at that level of selfhood, of truth, of wholeness, there's no going back. You stop waiting to be chosen. You choose yourself. And in doing so, you become unforgettable. Sometimes it's not her presence that reveals her power, it's her absence. The unforgettable woman isn't someone who demands to be remembered. She's someone who never needed to be. Her impact isn't created through noise, but through resonance, and that resonance lingers. When she leaves a space, something feels quieter, not in volume, but in energy. You notice the depth that's missing, the calm that's gone, the truth that's no longer holding the room. Her absence exposes the contrast. And that contrast, that's what makes her unforgettable. She never tried to be irreplaceable. That's exactly why she is. Her magnetism doesn't come from performing a role or filling a need. It comes from embodying a truth so complete, so stable, that when it's gone, everything else feels slightly off balance. She's not the woman who texts endlessly to prove she cares. She's the woman who made you feel seen without saying much at all. She's not the one who fought to stay in your life. She simply chose to be there while it made sense. And when it didn't, she let go. Cleanly, quietly, fully. And that kind of clarity, that kind of non-attachment, It sticks with people far longer than desperation ever could. Carl Jung once wrote that, "What you resist not only persists, but will grow in size." The unforgettable woman doesn't resist reality. She accepts it, and that acceptance becomes her superpower. She doesn't cling, she doesn't chase, she doesn't pretend, and because she doesn't force connection, her presence feels sacred. You can't replicate her with someone who says the same things or looks the same way. Because what made her special wasn't what she did, it was how she made you feel. And more than that, how she made you feel yourself. She didn't try to mirror you, she mirrored herself. And that authenticity gave you permission to lower your mask, even if just for a moment. The memory of that kind of connection, it doesn't fade, it deepens. People often confuse absence with indifference, but her absence doesn't come from lack of care, it comes from respect. She respects her time, her energy, her peace. And if you couldn't match that, she didn't lower herself to beg. She walked away, with dignity, with self-possession, with an energy that whispered, "I am not afraid to leave where I'm not deeply met." The silence she leaves behind is not empty, it's full of meaning, full of what was real, full of the invisible weight of someone who never tried to impress, but always left an impression. And that's the paradox. The woman who doesn't try to be unforgettable becomes the hardest to forget, because her absence isn't the withdrawal of noise, it's the withdrawal of depth. And depth, once felt, makes everything shallow feel unbearable. Those who meet her often think they'll find her again, that someone else will carry the same frequency, but they rarely do, because what made her rare wasn't in her effort, it was in her essence. She taught you that presence isn't about constant proximity, it's about impact. And her impact didn't come from needing you, it came from being herself in your presence. That's why her absence echoes, not with bitterness, not with longing, but with the undeniable memory of someone who didn't need to stay to leave a mark. She became unforgettable, not by filling space, but by being so fully herself, that even when she left, something of her remained. You don't become unforgettable by trying to be everything to everyone. You become unforgettable by being deeply, unapologetically yourself. In a world that teaches women to minimize, to mold, to manage how they're perceived, choosing wholeness is revolutionary. When you stop performing and start embodying, everything changes. You move from seeking validation to standing in self-recognition, from fearing loss to radiating presence, from being chosen to doing the choosing. Carl Jung taught that our power lies not in becoming someone new, but in reclaiming every part of who we already are. That's the essence of the woman no one wants to lose. Not because she's perfect, but because she's real, and real leaves a mark. If this video resonated with you, you are already walking that path. Keep going, keep evolving, and most of all, keep choosing yourself. There are more videos on this channel to guide, inspire, and challenge you. If you're ready to go deeper, hit subscribe and explore the next chapter. Because becoming unforgettable isn't a destination, it's a daily decision.